for over 1,000 men, retractable cupolas, 3.5 miles of interlocking tunnels.
Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the Hilltop Pillbox here in Abbotsford, British Columbia, Canada. And happy 4th of July to all of my American viewers. It's the day we're filming and hopefully putting this up onto YouTube. And yeah, it's a great day for y'all down south. And I hope it's a fun, safe, and respectful celebration despite all the current goings on. So here we are, Europe from the, I think this came out in, let's just check the book here, I want to say 2000, might be 99, should have looked this up first, 99 it is, okay, and I think that it's one of the better, actually, iterations of our Axis and Allies universe. Now, some people have been asking for me to do a global or to do some more HBG stuff, which I definitely will be moving towards. But right now I'm in the middle of a BBR, YouTube Wars, and it's going to be taking another couple of weeks. And once that's done, then I will be moving on to some other stuff. But for right now, space constraints only allow me to do up the little maps here. So yeah, without any further ado, we're gonna get going here. For those of you who are not really familiar with this version, there's a couple of things that really make it an enjoyable game. First things first, you got the oil. So I think there's a little glare there. So you got the oil here, and all these yellow territories have little red numbers in them, and they add up to 8. And the purpose of those, of the oil, is they are kind of an abstract way to help out with the national production here. Man, these glares, I gotta get different lights. Anyway, so you see here, we've got this chart, 8 all the way down to 1. And as the Germans take these territories, they'll put their token on here up to a maximum of 8. Most games usually gets to 8, sometimes pretty soon, like within maybe 4 rounds, and sometimes it takes a little longer. But when that happens, the Allies then have to dig into their pockets collectively and come up with $8. Now, in many cases, the US just ponies up the dough. Russia certainly shouldn't be giving any of that away. They're going to be hard pressed. Sometimes the UK will pitch in if the Americans have a specific purchase. All right, so it's money for the Germans, and it actually directly takes away money from the Allies. Okay, the other thing are the convoy zones. I really like these convoy zones. Very simple. You know, if ship moves in, it's a convoy. Done for 3 from Britain. Very, very simple. Historical Board Gaming does the same thing with their 1939. Nice and simple. And all you have to do is go in there and kill that thing. If it submerges, so let's say, you know, Germany's in here and the British bring a battleship, because there's no cruisers in this, so it's battleships and destroyers and transports and subs. So if a battleship comes in here and the sub says, I really don't want to fight that thing, it can just submerge, and then you have this situation where the sub is submerged, it's not convoying, okay? But once the British leave, it can come up and do its convoy duties again. The other thing in this game is that tanks defend at a 2. They don't defend at a 3, they only defend at a 2. So, as Germany, I have found over the years that while tanks are nice for some punch, the counter punch that the Russians usually are able to throw at it, for the first 5 or 6 turns, there's usually a good Russian response. The tanks usually die. So for myself, and sometimes to my own demise, I focus a bit more on artillery and infantry, and use air power to give me those 3s and 4s that I need. And then, you know, hopefully my sheer weight of numbers will help. Now, the nice thing about the tanks, though, they only cost 5, right? So they're just $1 more to get an extra pip on the attack. And, of course, they can blitz. So, you know, there's something to be said for that as well. But defending at a 2, it's kind of sad to watch your tanks fall to the likes of just swarms of infantry. That's kind of annoying. And many times don't get hits back, right? Because it's only a 2. And that's pretty much it for any major differences from things that you're used to. And strategic bombing raids, you fly over, you get shot at, all that kind of stuff. But beyond that, there you go. You'll notice these purple territories here. That's these are the ones that typically fall. Bessarabia is not worth anything and usually falls right away. The other thing I'll mention is that you see that the Soviets here have 4 industrial complexes. Okay, they have a lot of options for building, so they can attack from the flanks quite easily. And so what happens is Germans will come in and maybe they'll take Leningrad. Right now, the Soviets can build 10 things on there if they want. Like, there's no restrictions. But when the Germans take it, they can only build up to the IPC value, which is 1. Okay, and that goes for Stalingrad, Archangel as well. If they take Moscow, that's game over. If Moscow falls, it's game over. If Germany is still held. If Germany falls and can't be taken back, then of course the Allies will win. So even if Russia is gone. Now a lot of people, I think the out of box might even say, no, as soon as Moscow falls, it's game over. We don't like that because then it's, we can abandon Berlin and just send a whole bunch of tanks and planes that way and not even worry about it. But we feel like we should have a little bit of honesty here and try to keep a bit of stuff free here in Western Europe. Keep it freed from the clutches of the evil Allied contingent. All right, well, that's it. Here we go. We are going to start things off, and we'll let you know how it turns out after round 1 of Axis and Allies Europe from about 21 years ago. All right, round 1 is in the books, and Germany had a very, very strong opening round. And we're going to talk about it here in just a second, but there's 2 things I want to mention that I forgot to mention that at the beginning when I said it's pretty much like other games with some neat things. A couple of very neat things. First of all, to start the game, the Germans get 12 bucks worth of troops, units, whatever, and they can save that money or they can spend it right away and put it on the board at the start of the game. Okay, anywhere they already have units, they can add up to 12 IPCs worth of units. That could be a destroyer worth 12, 4 infantry, what have you. It could be a fighter worth 12. Okay, and yeah, these are the prices of everything down here. So it's a little different than newer iterations of the game. Little glare there. Subs are actually 8 bucks. So you can get the glare out of there. Subs are actually 8 bucks. So, okay, so that's the first thing. It's those extra 12 bucks, and the Allies also get 12 bucks to spend at the same time. Okay, so the typically what happens is the Germans will get their 12 bucks, they'll place it, and then typically the Russians will end up with 12 extra bucks. And in this case, I just built 4 infantry for them. Okay. The other thing is that destroyers cost 12, but they attack and defend at a 3. So they're actually more powerful than destroyers. Okay, and destroyers don't get the attack. So what happens is that the destroyers tend to get built a lot by the Americans at the start of the game in order to take care of the sub problem. But subs are 8 bucks, which is 20% of the opening German economy, and that economy does not go up quickly at all until they start getting into the Caucasus and get into the oil fields. So they're spending, between 15 and 20% every time they buy 1 sub. And they definitely need ground forces to take Moscow in this game. But the subs are handy too, and I'll tell you why. Because in this one right here, they were able to get 3 convoys. They spent their 12 bucks on a couple of subs, or on a sub, pardon me, and an artillery. And here we have 11 convoy zone worth of UK money. So the UK, who has lost its entire fleet down here, they are, instead of getting 25, now they're getting 14. Alright, so the Americans had to build some destroyers, and they'll go out here and try to mop up a lot of these subs next round. But these subs are, they're important to Germany. Germany, in this game, again, my experience, yours could be totally different. If Germany just goes whole hog on ground units and tries to push into Russia, they tend to fail. Because what that does is it opens the door for some cheap British and American landings in France. But if they keep subs out here at 8 bucks, they force the Americans and sometimes the British to spend 12 bucks on destroyers to try to take care of them. Plus you have these convoy zones. Right? So again, it's you really have to react in this game as the Allies. What does Germany do? You've got to react. So because Germany built 2 subs, and spent another one on an additional sub to start the round that ended up in a convoy zone, the Americans were forced to buy 3 destroyers for $36, and that's 90% of their cash. All right. The Germans also, like they say, they sank everything. The British destroyer here was up in Davis Strait. That was the one victory they had. 2 German U-boats went up there and killed the transport. So, oh, and that's another change I was going to talk about. Transports defended a 1, and they can be taken any time during battle. And for what it's worth, also the Allies can take transports as casualties. So if you go into a battle and your first roll doesn't go well, and the other guy gets some hits on you weren't expecting, and maybe you brought transports for whatever reason for fodder, you can use them because they are actual participants in the battle because they defend at a 1. They don't attack, but you can use them as cannon fodder. So a few things that got laid by the wayside when Global 40 came out. And actually in Sired Blood, his Bloodbath rules, the new set, the transports, typical transports, if you pair them together, they defend at a 1. So for every 2 transports, you get 1 die at a 1. Only in defense, though. And again, they get taken last as casualties. But with his upgraded transports, if you take that as a tech, which in the game right now, Matt Todd is playing the US. He took improved transports as a tech. That's what I took last game. Didn't quite work out for us, but it was close. They defend 1 for 1, right? So you don't need 2 transports, just 1. Okay, enough of other games. On to this game here. So the Germans came into Bessarabia. They only lost 1 guy. Came into East Poland, where there were 4 Russians, and they killed them all. It took 2 rounds, but they killed them all and didn't lose a thing. Now you'll notice there's no tanks here. I didn't use any tanks. I just used air power, and then here the artillery trying to help out, and got some good rolls for them. So the tanks are kind of hiding back here. On this turn, might come in, but again, if the tanks come in here and punch, they're going to get swarmed and probably won't be too good for them. You'll also notice some British equipment here. All right, this has to happen in this game. Is the British have to fly planes over and by hook or crook get anything they can to Russia, because then at the end of Russia's turn, anything that's an Allied plane or artillery or tank will turn into Soviet property if the Soviet player wants to do that. They don't have to, but they can. Okay? So keep that in mind. You could basically free money for the Russians because they tend to not do so well. I thought in this one here, because I typically, as the Germans, try to collect this money, I thought, you know what, I'm going to bring in a couple of tanks and force the Germans to bring more over here than they really want to. Okay? So we'll see if that plays into it at all. All right, so that's basically the first round. Germans came in, the Russians just got everybody together, no attacks. Only lost $1 of income, but the convoy up here is in trouble, and we'll see what happens with that. The subs are alive and well in the Atlantic. All right, there are currently 8 subs on the board, so they're doing pretty well. And then the rest of the things going on here are all pretty status quo. All right, we will let you know what happens at the end of round 2. Stay tuned. All right, well, another decent round for the Germans, as they typically have, but then they kind of took a little bit of a drubbing in the second half. We'll talk about that. On the Eastern Front, they moved up, took the Baltic states, and pushed a whole bunch of stuff into Eastern Poland, and the Soviets simply gathered up their forces and built 7 men in Stalingrad so they can punch back Belarus or Ukraine. Leningrad sitting pretty good. The British fighters have become Soviets, and the British bomber became a Soviet bomber. The Russians thought about moving 2 infantry here on a transport over to Norway, but thought better of it, as that would just weaken Karelia and open the gates to Archangel. Well, let's go punch around a little bit. So, figured we'd stay put for now. Down in the south here, the Germans dropped some stuff off in Libya and destroyed the British transport and destroyer here with the help of a bomber that came down, but now is stuck way out of position, as it were. But the Soviets are committed to helping out the British here, so the Germans have got to bring more than this. So they'll be making a couple of trips back and forth to ensure success in the Middle East. Out here, you remember the Americans had 4 destroyers. Well, they sent one here, one here, one here, and one here. This one failed. The sub actually destroyed the destroyer, and on the first roll, and the destroyer missed. So that British convoy is still active, but this one's gone. That sub disappeared, and this one disappeared. And here's another neat rule from this this version: is if you go into a sea zone to do an attack and you have some of your units here, so the Americans came in and they attacked a German sub here. Now, had the German sub gotten a hit, you can choose any of the units, even units that aren't yours, if you know what I mean. So the Americans come in, the Americans attack, they could take British casualties if the sub had gotten a hit. So that's an interesting thing that the Allies kind of have going for them, is that they can, you know, 1, use transports as fodder, 2, they can use anybody else's stuff. So that kind of spells a good idea here, where you can load up with stuff here and then send over a lone destroyer and maybe tackle 2 or 3 subs, and then, you know, whittle away the British stuff, but you'll likely kill all the German stuff. So it's a neat option there. As far as everything else goes, pretty much status quo. With the belief that all of these subs would have been gone, built a couple of transports and some artillery and a man to load up. We now have 3 transports worth of stuff that we can now deliver someplace, but the Germans still have stuff down here, so we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen. They have some coastal air power as well, so this is not a done deal. Plus the Germans are going to build, and likely build a sub or 2, just to keep the Atlantic relevant. Alright, well that's it for round 2. We'll see what round 3 brings in just a moment. And just a little note from the last one, some of you might have been saying, what about this British 5 convoy? Yes, that's definitely getting convoyed. The British lost $5. You might be asking, well, why come down here and worry about 3 when you got a 5? Well, I think it's one of those strategic versus tactical kind of ideas where, yes, this one here is worth $2 more, but if we had taken care of this sub, that really opens up the South Atlantic to start landing in Africa, and from Africa you can also punch into down here. Sending a destroyer up here while taking care of a 5 maybe is nice. It doesn't really help out being able to get American stuff on the ground. So in case somebody was looking at that going, you screwed up, screwing up is not killing this thing, but hey, that's the dice. Alright, very interesting round 3, and the Germans have gone lock, stock, and smoking barrels into the Ukraine, causing the Soviets to retreat to Stalingrad and just stock up there, and also in Leningrad, in case the Germans want to go through Bessarabia, or Belarusia, pardon me. They've already gone through Bessarabia. The Germans did take Egypt, so they got $1 paid for by the Americans, as they are wont to do. And the Russians, though, did decide to put a couple guys on a transport and bring them over to Norway. So the Germans may have to turn around and deal with that, and the rest of them will head into Karelia and Vyborg. But Archangel, as you can see, is wide open. That is just out of necessity right now. There's not much else that can be done. Germans did build 2 U-boats into the Danish Sea, but the British then had their 3 destroyers here. They sent 2 over and they sank each other. And the Americans were able to help alleviate some stuff here, and the British took care of that convoy. But the American convoy here, the Germans had put stuff here and here, and the Germans won that one. That's not good, because the American build was a couple of transports, so you're throwing away some stuff. But Operation Torch went with very minimal casualties, of course, but they did get one. The Germans always seem to get one there for some reason. But beyond all that, that's pretty much the status quo of things. So the British have a couple of transports here. Americans have a couple of transports. So this U-boat, target-rich environment, but he can only go one direction. So do you want to stop the British from landing, or do you want to stop the Americans from landing? I guess that's your big decision. And who knows if you'll stop, because as we know, in this game, the transports defend at a 1, so they might get a lucky hit too. The Americans flew a plane over to Leningrad, which will likely become a Soviet fighter at the end of this round, or the Russian turn. And yeah, that's what we got here. So the Russians, I think it's 20 infantry they have in there. And the Germans definitely have more stuff, but they might not have enough to withstand a double punch and lots of air power here. I got 4 fighters and 2 bombers, 3 tanks, a couple artillery. So Germany's got to keep this going. So I don't know if we're going to spend any money on subs this time. We might just have to say, well, the sub battle for the Atlantic is over, and we are going to head for Moscow. We'll let you know what they've decided at the end of round 4. Alright, some sweeping changes to the board here. Let's start over here on the Eastern Fronts. And the Germans went into Stalingrad. They killed 24 Soviet infantry in 2 rounds, and they lost 6. Yeah. So, yeah, Moscow's in trouble here. So we're kind of circling the wagons and bringing back as many as we can. See if we can withstand. Because in 2 turns, the Germans will definitely be hammering into Russia, into Soviet Moscow, that is, using all these guys and likely most of those guys. So it'll just come down to the dice, I think, at that point. If the Germans win it, then they'll probably do okay. But if they lose it, they could be in trouble, because USA have landed in France and have taken control. Now that's thanks to, in part anyway, to a British landing. You'll notice 2 British transports that are there. They sent over 4 units and they all died, but they killed 3 of the 6 units that were sitting there, and or 3 of the 5, or 2 of the 5. 2 of the 5. Anyway, there were only 3 Germans left, a fighter and an artillery and an infantry, and the Americans were able to mop them up for the loss of only 2 infantry. So good for them. And the Americans have some follow-up troops sitting in Ireland right now, which of course is not really a place that you can own in this game, because as you may not know, all the strict neutrals are strictly neutral. Portugal's so neutral they don't even get a border with Spain. How about that? So the Americans built some more troops to bring over, and they'll be over in a couple of rounds. Over here though, the Germans came into Palestine and killed everything in 2 rounds of combat, all 6 British units, and lost, wait for it, 1 man. That was it. So the Germans really lucked out here, and the dice were hot for them, but the dice did betray them at one point, because they did have their German subs sitting in here, and the British had their 2 transports, and Americans had their 2 transports. So I sent it over here thinking, you know, if we can keep the British out of the war, because they can be there instantly, that'd be great. And the German U-boat went over there, and the transports sank the U-boat. So how about that? That's pretty much it. But that's, yeah, that's ANA Europe, right? You can do the wrap-up of each round pretty quickly. But everything seems to be going Germany's way on land. But at sea, the Allies have taken over. The Atlantic is now clear of any German presence, and it likely will not return anytime soon. And the Germans appear to be well on their way to taking care of all of this area. We'll see what the Soviets do on their round. Here we are, moving on to turn 5. It'll be a telling tale. Well, this music is pretty fitting. You may recognize it. Enemy at the gates, and although that takes place in Stalingrad, the enemy is definitely at the gates of Moscow here. But the Russians have scrambled back, and it looks a bit more like a fair fight now. I haven't put it in the odds calculator here, but looks a lot more even than it did a little while ago. Germans, I think, still have a little advantage, so it really depends on that first round of rolling. You know, if the Germans get 15, 20 hits, then yeah, this is probably going to be over. But if they only get 8 or 10, and the Russians get 10 or 12, then that's a different story. The Russians decided to leave Leningrad and just go up into Karelia to be a royal pain. And yeah, the Germans will likely head into Moscow on this turn 6 coming up. Down in the south here, the Russians counterattacked in Transjordan just to knock down the oil by 2. So the Germans will have to try to take care of that, or else the Russians will sweep across here and gobble up stuff. So they're going to have to kill this before they carry on with the rest, although they should be able to scoop this all up this round. But again, still got to roll the dice. Over here, the British forced a landing and were quite successful. And the Americans followed up with their 4 units. They got some more coming, and lots of transports now. Not a lot of punch, but if they're just going to bulk up British landings, then that might be all they need. But the Germans, for the first turn now here, have had to send everything to the west in order to try to knock back these guys instead of sending things to the east. So this is pretty much it. So if they can't take it this round, or at least whittle it down to a very small level, the Russians may become a little resurgent, which is not what Germany needs. Now Germany's making a pretty good scratch right now. If they hadn't lost France, they would have been up at 52 bucks. So they collected 52 last round, and they also collected from the oil. They collected $4, but now they're down to 2 because of those crazy Soviets. The Bismarck here, which we know is in the North Sea, but just go with me on this, is heading west and seeing if it can't cause a little bit of problem over here in the Atlantic. And yeah, we're getting down to it now. We'll have to wait and see if these landings are enough to draw enough German material away from the Eastern Front, or if it's just going to be quick dispatching and back to business as usual. We'll let you know what round 6 brings right after this. Alright, sorry for the glare there, but hopefully you can see the battle calculator here. I've put in the battle of the battle for Moscow, and you get to witness it in real time. But as you can see on the phone, if it brightens up a little bit, on the phone here, it's an 86.1% chance of winning. And there's a 0.5% chance that they tie. So we'll see what happens here. We'll open up, of course, with a couple of AAA shots. One at the bomber and one at the fighter. We'll just do them at the same time, assuming that you take the bomber first if there's a hit. And there's no hit on that one, and no hit on that one. So the AAA didn't do any good. Alright, so here we go. We have got 8 German infantry. And they will be going... Look at that. 3 hits on 8 ones. I think this does not bode well for the Russians. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And then we've got 11 artillery and 11 men for 22 at 2. So we'll just roll 7. And we'll roll them 3 times plus 1. Wow. 3 hits. Okay, well, no hits there. So that's 3, 4, 5. So 5 hits. So I'll just take one of the 5 chips. And then we have 14 tanks and a fighter, so that's 15 threes. So I'll just roll the greens here. 2 hits. 2 more hits, that's 4. 2 more hits. Alright, it's a little bit below average, so 6 hits. Take a 5 and a 6. And then, of course, the bomber with a hit. Alright, so now the Russians. Well, we'll just start with the bombers defending at 1s. Oh, look at that. A little bit of cheeriness there. So we'll get rid of one German. I'll keep this area clean so you can kind of see the losses. So the bombers, they're obviously gone. And now we have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. So we have 35 at 2. So we'll roll 7 dice 5 times. Okay, so here we go. They really need a good round here. So that's not a good round. 1 hit. 2 hits. This is they got to pick it up right now. There we go. So that's 6 hits. That's 3 rounds. 6 hits. That's 8 on 4 rounds. 9 on 5 rounds. Oh, come on. 10. Oh, good grief. Well, Russia's pretty screwed here. So we got 11 hits. So that's the... Oh, whoops. That's not 11. There's 5, 6, 7. And then you need 4 more. So I'll put the 5 back there, and I'll just grab this guy and put him up there. All the same. Yeah, they needed to do better than that. They really needed to outclass the Germans there. But we do have 5 defending fighters here, so we should get 4 hits on this. 3 at the very least. I've only got 4 dice, so we'll roll 4 and then we'll roll 1 more. Ooh, 4 for 4 is nice. And 5 for 5. That is encouraging. That might help them out a little bit. Alright, so there are the losses so far. We have 17 on this side, and we have 15 on this side. But the Russians lost 2 ones, and the Germans lost 8 ones. So they haven't lost as much punch as the Russians have. But hey, we will carry on. We now have, there's still 11 artillery and 2 infantry, so that's 13. So we will roll 7 and 6 twos. Here's 7. So we got 2 hits. And then 6. 1 hit. Oh! So 3 hits. It goes back there. 1, 2, 3. There's 3 there. And then we know that we have 15 threes. And I think the Germans only got 6 hits on their 15 threes. So a little bit lower than what they should have been. Oh, they're making up for it this time. There's 4. Spoke too soon. So they got 4. 5. They got less hits this time. So 5 hits. Okay. And then they got a bomber, of course. And a miss. Well, the Russians may actually... Oh, I'm not going to... Shut up. What are you doing? Talking like that. Alright. 8, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21... 22 at 2. So we got our 7s again. 7 dice, we'll roll them 3 times and add 1. That's a good roll. 3. Ooh. And 4 more is 7. 2 more is 9. 10 hits. That's actually quite good. So we go 1, 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Alright, so there we go. Here's all the losses. Finally some artillery has been killed. Alright. Well, this is actually looking a lot better all of a sudden, but shut up, shut up, shut up. Alright. Here we go. We got 3 2s. That's why I should shut up, right? Right there. Just shut up. Alright, so there's 3. 15. If they catch fire now, it's over. Oh, we got 3. 4, 5, 6. Oh, 10 hits on 15. So there's 5, 8, 9, 10. Alright, and then we've got the bomber. Missed again. Wow. Alright, so we have 5, 10, 13. This is the Black Hawk Down music, so a little bit more modern warfare. So we've got, sorry, what did I have here? 13, 14 at 2. So we'll just roll 7s twice. They need some heat right now. Oh, that's pretty good. 4 hits. That'll take care of the artillery and 1 tank. And then we've got the fighters again. Well, we got 3, 4 hits. So we'll get rid of that and bring in one chip here. And we might as well bring it in from this one here. Alright. So after a couple rounds of combat here, we have got 9, 10 3s and a 4 versus a 2 and 5 4s. We will see how it goes. Just a moment, folks. I gotta go check on something. Be right back. Do you ever have that nagging thought in your head that you forgot to do something and you can't quite remember what it is? Yeah, I forgot to do these guys on the second round of combat. So what we're going to do is we're just going to roll it up, and it's kind of hard to go back and do all the other stuff. So we're just going to roll them up. Oh well, they only got 2 hits anyway, and 1 more. 3 hits. So we'll take away another 3 tanks. Alright. So that's, I could rewind the whole thing and reset and go, but this is looking pretty tense. I don't want to mess it up. So, any more than I already have. So here we go. And for those of you who want to type in there, yeah, but then he would have lost artillery and wouldn't have had the 3 shots and all. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But, not much can be done at this point except that, because I'm not going to set all that up, because this isn't for money. We're just having some fun. So here we go. We've got 7 at 3. So we're going to do 7 at 3, and then we got 1 at 4. We're going to chuck him in at the same time here. Alright, so there's only 6 units left. If they get 6 hits, it's all over. Well, they didn't get 6 hits, but they got 3. So you got 1 tank and 2 fighters. Okay. So now we have coming back, we got 1 tank, and we're going to have 5 fighters. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 hits. Alright, so we're going to take away those 4 tanks. So now we're down to 3 at 3, 1 at 4 versus 3 at 4. Will this be it? Yes, it will. 4 hits. Well, let's take the 3 Soviet fighters. Oh, not impressive at all. We don't even have to lose a plane. And there's nothing there that can help take Moscow back. So, that was there. There we go. So the Russians are going to take it, or pardon me, the Germans are going to take it. They still got a couple planes left. This guy can make it all the way back. He can go there. This doesn't even matter because they can't take Germany this round, and that's the out-of-box rules, is that you got to hold it for the round. And, you know, the Germans could come into here and we could move stuff there. Their build was this. It was 11 men and 6 artillery, because they're kind of awash with cash. So that's it. That U-boat strategy at the beginning seems to work, because it keeps the Americans and the British building destroyers instead of transports, and then by the time they get into the war, it's too little too late. And even with the American and British air power coming over here and getting transformed into Soviet stuff, it didn't quite work out for them. And we won't even bother with those, because that's the game, folks. Well, really appreciate you watching today. Wish it had been, well, that's pretty close actually. One ground unit left. And like I say, they had an 86% chance of winning. That was a lot closer than 86. And you remember that first round of rolling with all those twos, 35 twos. I think we got, what is it? I can't remember now. 7 or 8 hits? I can't remember. But a little bit below average. And you know what? 3 more hits and this is an entirely different game. So, and who knows? Maybe my mess up by forgetting the fighters on that one round caused enough problems that maybe I messed up the odds. But looking at Germany and the pile of money they're making, and the fact that even if Russia had won, they might have a fighter left. This guy here was going to die. They were going to take Leningrad, going to take Russia, going to take Siberia, going to take all the oil, likely kill all this stuff, and then whatever Russia can build here with they'll have, I think, 12 bucks. They build 4 guys. Good chance they wouldn't survive. So we'll call this an Axis victory, a German victory, as it were, as they did it on their own, because Italy's not part of the game yet, and the Japanese are off having their own fun somewhere. But thanks for watching, folks. Hope you are if you're in America, having a great 4th of July celebration, and if you're not, I hope you're just staying safe and having a great time out there. Take care of each other, hug your loved ones, tell your friends that they're special and important to you, and thank them for playing. And as always, may the dice be ever with you.